This is the new Honda CBR1000RR. In my opinion, it's one of the most underrated leader bikes out there. In fact, if I didn't tell you it was 1,000, you might mistake it for a 600 due to its lightweight and smaller frame. These days, when you show up to bike meets, most people show up in 600s. You got about 50% of the people that show up in the Kawasaki's. You'll get a lot of Gixxers, maybe that one guy that's got that Ducati. But I rarely see other Hondas out there. And I'm not sure why, because I think they're a very underrated bike. So let me show you a few of the built-in modes and features that come with the Honda. The first is this electronic steering stabilizer dampener. Whereas most bikes you'd have to buy an aftermarket cylinder that only had a static resistance, this has an electromagnet, and as your speed increases, it stiffens up the steering to avoid tank slappers. So if we go ahead and turn it on here, you see right away, you get your selectable modes. So you can turn the power up, down. You can make it ride like a 600 if you want, or even a 400. So that's power mode. That's traction control mode. That's wheelie control mode. And that is actually engine braking. Each one of those can be customized to whatever level you feel is necessary. Honda has one more screen of settings that you can really customize it. If you hold the select down and mode button at the same time, it goes into this display where you can really customize your settings. You can set the quick shifter to only work going up, only work going down, or work both ways. The best part about this, though, is it will show you the check engine lights, which is something I think all vehicles, motorcycles, etc. should tell you from the factory. If you get a check engine code, you can actually go in here, you can look at the check engine code, Google it online if you need to, and it tells you exactly what's wrong without having to get a scan tool or anything else out. It's got a lap timer. It's got a built-in button here to reset your laps every time you go around a track. You can set up your display for circuit, street, or mechanic, general settings, date and time, even service settings, suspension, things like that. Get back out of there. All right. Well, let's go take it for a ride. This road is got a lot of turns in it. This first turn coming up here is actually over 90 degrees. A lot of the turns in this road have apexes that are one-lane bridges, so I think it's a good test road. I've ridden it both by myself with a passenger. I've ridden the 600 on this road by myself and with a passenger. It just so happens if you catch it in the shadow, I am riding with a passenger in this video because that's when I happen to be recording. So first impressions, this leader bike does not feel like a leader bike size-wise or weight-wise. I had them both on a scale. I had my 600 down to 400 pounds even. I had this on a scale. It weighed in around 415. That's going to vary a little bit depending on how much fuel you put in each one. But the 600 has the undertail exhaust where this does not, so it actually has a lower center of gravity. Feels a little more flickable. It doesn't feel like a leader bike when you're sitting on it. The older leader bikes, even the newer R1s, the tank's bigger, the front cowl area is bigger. On this one, they really aren't. They're really pretty narrow. I rode a brand new R1 here just recently, and you could definitely tell sitting on that, it felt more like a leader bike with its width. So that's another good comparison, this bike versus the R1. The R1 has a very linear power band. The higher the RPMs you go, the more power you get. It's just very linear. The Honda CBR1000RR has this mid-range torque right around the 7,000, 8,000 RPM mark. It really has some torque. It's not so linear. Whatever your preference is on that, maybe that's which way you go. This bike is very computer controlled, as all new leader bikes are.
you can get it up to 8,000 RPMs even with a passenger. Just crank the throttle and the front wheel is going to come off the ground a little bit, even with wheelie control set on the lowest setting. Computer's going to kick in and say, no, you shouldn't have done that, and it's going to set the front wheel back down. So if you're a new rider, it really makes you feel like you're a better rider than you are. So be careful. If you get on this bike and somebody offers you a ride on their older analog bike where it's got a physical cable connecting to the throttle and there's no computer intervention, you might get over your head really quick and 12 o'clock it or do something else. Same with the traction control. You can come out of a turn on this one hard, crank on the throttle a little too much, front wheel picks up, traction control light kicks in, set you back down. I understand why the manufacturers do it because of all the new riders and the power this thing makes. I would guess with the tune, the velocity stacks, and restrictors removed, this thing's making at least 180 horsepower on a dyno. Overall though, compared to the 600 before, I would have told you to get the 600 because to me you have to go around turns, and 600 versus 1000 isn't much different. In fact, I prefer Kawasaki 400, not because it has power, but because it's very flickable. This bike is very flickable. This bike feels light. It feels like a 600 when you're sitting on it. It feels like a 600 when you're riding it. It just has 50 or 60 more horsepower than a 600 without really giving up any disadvantages. Compared to the R1, they both have the quick shifter. I would say this quick shifter on the Honda is slightly more notchy, whereas the R1 was more mushy or smooth. I think that's more on the way they cut the star gear. But again, with a leader bike, you can pretty much just leave it in 4th or 5th gear on a road like this. You don't have to do a lot of shifting if you don't want to. Traction control works great on this bike, as I already talked about. The ABS I tried on a gravel road, kicks right in, does not kick the front wheel out at all. The seats are more comfortable on this bike for both the rider and the passenger than they are on the older 600s, I will tell you that. I did get a Corbin seat thinking that might even be more comfortable, but unfortunately I ride right up on the tank, and the Corbin seat has metal reinforcements in the area by the tank, and it actually was a little more painful. I think if you rode back farther, the Corbin seat would be more comfortable, but that's just not my riding style. Years ago I would have said get the 600 because I wouldn't have wanted to take the extra weight penalty, but these days this leader bike is pretty much down to what a 600 weighs. Even compared to the R1, when you sit on it, the Honda does not feel like a leader bike. Everything's narrower, the gas tank's narrower, the cowl area is narrower. It's like sitting on a 600. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, please like and subscribe. And if you only clicked on it because of the thumbnail, don't worry, I'm not going to disappoint you either. Here we go, one last pull in 1st gear on this closed track just to see what it'll do. 93 miles an hour in 1st gear. What could be more fun than that?